Hello. My name is Miriam and I'm a philosopher from Sweden, and I'm talking to Dyonne from Holland, who's a healer, and Rachel Fell who is in the US. What are you?
Coach consultant.
A coaching consultant, but that's quite, as we discussed last time, isn't that the fun question?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. But okay, working with people at least.
Yes.
And so our overall topic in this series is personal development, and today we wanted to talk about professional development and personal development, these two together. So here we go again with the what are you and what do you work with, and like the overall themes and life and all of those important things. How do we call ourselves? What is the mission? What's our life mission? What's the not the life mission? What's the professional mission? What do we want from work? Right. I hope that got you started.
Oh, certainly. So it's interesting, right? Like we spoke a little bit last time about positive disintegration. And I think for me personally, I feel like we're in this place where the systems and the structures in which we live are so alien to our human nature. Miriam, I actually ran across something you had shared on the internet this morning that really like resonated with me. I think you said something about having a purpose that you felt strongly about, like the emancipation from like unnatural and unhealthy systems. And that just got my heart going, right? Yeah. And I think it's interesting, right? Like we live in a world that is full of constraints and sort of what I'll call like classical but maladjusted order. And, when we think about expansion, how do we work with the existing systems? How do we meet our needs for human animal-based security and, ensuring that we're all like safe and cared for in the sort of most basic of ways, but then really being able to like work with a sense of purpose and a sense of meaning that's self-generated and that doesn't come from the outside. And I think as related to positive disintegration, when we start to be able to balance that sort of like individualistic with the collective and sort of the classical with the aspirational, we can start to create our own meaning, but we have to sort of deconstruct to reconstruct in a lot of ways.
We do. I'm so glad you saw that. That was exactly what I was thinking about now. Because that's like my work mission, really, to help emancipate other people and myself in the same process from unsuitable and unhealthy ways of living. And I was like, as I wrote that thing, I was thinking, was it unhealthy or unsuitable ways of life or of living? I'm like, of living. And then I just wrote that because that is like the active verb, it's not just you need to change your life, but you can change the way you live your life, and you can notice this is not suitable, this doesn't work. And we talk about that so many times, right, Dyonne? About how it feels when you feel aligned and you feel like you're on your path. It feels good, and then it's suitable, and not good in the on drugs kind of way, but in the other.
Yeah. It's very interesting, and it's interesting what Rachel says in terms of the positive disintegration, and when you're on the verge of making a choice in your life, when it's serving your soul, or if it's a stepping stone to serve your soul, and how the pandemic is either igniting something or making you move to something that's more close to your soul, or that we have to go into a certain survival mode back again, or somewhere in between, at least have another phase in between before we can fully do what we're here to do as soul purpose, sort of say. And what you say, Rachel, also to make ends meet, or just before we started this conversation, that's what you shared a bit about, and that's so interesting, what choices we make and why we make them, and if they still serve our personal purpose and for our growth, and is it indeed a good thing to not to say, okay, I postpone a certain choice, or are they all related to make you bring to that certain point what your soul so eagerly desires?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they all interrelated? Is it all part of the path? Rachel.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when in doubt, yes, I suppose. Yes, and it's
Yes,
always both. It's always connected.
I can say something before you can make. No, I wanted to add something actually about this. One of my very favorite young spiritual people that I'm following, she wrote a couple of books, and I was so into her dedicated soul work. And just recently, she posted on Instagram, well, after 15 years of being super devoted to my soul, I'm gonna stop with with doing my soul work, and I'm gonna replace what I'm doing. No, not replace, but I'm gonna change what I'm doing. And I think she was about to go into real estate or something, and I was reading it, really. No, but honestly, I was reading it, and this is exactly what this was about. Like, is she making sense? Is she moving away from her path? Is she doing something that's very understandable due to Corona, or due to, okay, can you follow your soul and still do something just for sustainability? Or, and it was so interesting. I had to reread that message the entire week, once or twice a day. I had to revisit what she said, and not per se to judge, but to really feel what it did for me as well. So I can totally understand where you're coming from with your current choice to
Yeah.
make, Rachel. So
Well,
yeah, how does that resonate?
yeah, I think that's a lovely addition, and it's a really important piece of this conversation, because I think it's quite easy, or to get caught up in sort of like false dichotomies or separations.
Mm.
And for me, alignment, health, being on your path, it's not possible without bringing the body along. The body includes those sort of like mental, emotional patterns, and maybe the nervous system as the seat of consciousness, right? I've been really diving deep
Mm,
into some consciousness YouTube videos and some articles, and really, like, I've always been fascinated by the nature of consciousness. One thing that's really interesting about the nature of consciousness, as best I can tell, is that I used that example earlier, maybe without giving enough context, but there's an anesthesiologist who suggests that consciousness exists in the space in between. So the space
mm,
between what I'll say the quantum and the physical, and the classical and the physical, so the smaller structures in the cells. He talks a lot about microtubules, and sort of like in the body, the sort of where classical sort of physics breaks down into quantum physics. And you can see this actually in so many different spaces, right? When we think about I was recently watching a Nova program about like the bridge between chemistry and biology is the cell wall, and the cell wall is non-dual. It's polarized at one side and non-polar at the other side. All that to say, I think we always kind of need both, and we need to bring our human vessel along, our mental, emotional, and what the soul, or the spiritual, or the existential, or that formless seed of meaning. And so at any given time, I don't know that there's one path, or one, it's the sole purpose. you know can you be in real estate and be bringing your soul along to the party? I believe yes. Because as Miriam was saying, living is an active act, and it's like it's in the process of there, without movement, without time, right? What does all of this matter in a vacuum? So I think we have to be able to hold space for all of our needs and all parts of ourselves, which for me
yes.
include the form, that sort of bridge between the form and the formless, and the nervous system, and then the existential, or the soul, the meaning.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I completely agree as well. And I have two jobs. And so one pays the bills and the other one is my sort of mission kind of thing. And I love my job that pays the bills. I love it. I love my coworkers. I love my boss. I love my boss's boss. I love all these people, and they like me. They seem to like me as well. And I'm thinking about I'm thinking about this David Hawkins book. I love him so much. But he talks about when he talks about these levels of consciousness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So when he talks about the levels of consciousness, and so the lowest level is shame. You know, when you feel that the God or the universe or whatever is punitive, and this is all that, you know, and you can raise your level. And then he says at these higher levels, you don't mind starting from scratch. You don't mind working as a janitor. You can bring your level of consciousness to these places. And I think about that so often when I'm like trying to help with some menial task, you know. I think I'm bringing a level of consciousness to this. I'm raising everything. Everything is raising with me. You know, like it's this. I can approach these income-bearing activities with just a sense of like elevation. It's possible. You can do that, and it's not
Definitely.
against anything. And it's like if anything, that is living in a soulful way, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I feel it also, as you say, even if I look at my overexcitabilities and all my alertness or consciousness or, you know, vigilance is maybe can be interpreted in the wrong way, but the way I approach my cats, the way I say their names, the way I feed them, the way I even do the litter, the way I do everything with them and about them. And then people always say, oh, well, they're so nice, and they even look at you and they listen to you. And I'm like, yeah, but I approach them mindful. I just, you know, I communicate with them. They're my children. And the way I do my exercising, I don't do it just on a physical level. I take everything in and I involve everything. I feel the sensations that occur for me, even if something happens emotionally or mentally. And so I think, as you say, Miriam, it's very beautifully said. With everything, you can take your consciousness, and yeah. So I think it's important. It's imperative. But once you're more awake and once you're more open, I think you cannot not take your consciousness with yourself. I mean, for all of us here, we're all on this path of how do you say, further opening, further awakening, and every choice we make comes with more. Yeah, every choice we make comes with more involvement all the time, more soul maturity. Yeah, there's so much I can say about this. It's very beautiful, this topic.
It really is. You know, what's interesting about what both of you just said, to maybe build on it slightly, expand, contract, expand. So the example you gave, Miriam, about you enjoying your job that, you know, you have based on income and you know, more, I would say, more physical needs, right? Does that space nourish and feed you? Like, where is that threshold, I suppose? So understanding the self, when we talk about like personal development and professional development together, it's like, where are you in your own personal development journey? How aware are you of self? How embodied are you of self? What are your needs? Are you honoring those needs? Are you sort of still unconscious to those needs or in denial? Even understanding the difference between wants and needs and the sort of like very gray area between those spaces. You know, there's so many, if we're able to see ourselves and honor our own needs first, I think we can participate in spaces that are not necessarily, you know, explicitly soul purpose aligned, those sorts of things. That said, those spaces too can actually do a number, I think, on our personal development, or that sort of what you're calling level of consciousness or like integrated self. So I think there's a level of self-awareness around sort of like, is this healthy for me? Is this space, you know, so it's the interaction with the space, what you're bringing to the party, but then also what the party is bringing to you. And it sounds like in your situation, Miriam, you have like a pretty strong culture, some pretty healthy collaborators, like a good team, and like a nice like sort of situation there. And I know some of my clients that are working with career and vocational issues, personal as related to professional, there's sometimes a struggle. Like we'll talk about that, they feel like they're in a swamp, for example, right? And it's like, I can raise my level of consciousness, but if I'm constantly surrounded by this very swampy environment, you know, where's the cost benefit there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a very important point. Like I wanted to say this too, like the the bad days, and when of course I can bring everything to Dyonne. You were talking so beautifully about how you feed your cats, and and you can bring everything of you into these situations. How I drink my coffee, how I do all these things. But sometimes I really don't do that. Sometimes I am just like stuck in my head, and I don't bring anything. And then usually my something that I'm holding. I sound like a crazy old woman now, but when I'm in that mood, my phone breaks down, or the computer doesn't work, or it's like my energy is sort of breaking things. It's trying to tell me on all fronts that I'm really not in alignment. It happened this morning, by the way, but it was sorted out. And that is also that is the big life, and the suitable and healthy way of living is to just say, aha, I'm in one of those spaces. But if you're in a job situation where you discover after 1 month that I have felt the same way every day, and I hate myself, I hate this job, then something needs to change. And this is where that's the out of alignment and noticing, and Hawkins talks about the levels of consciousness, but you can use the word consciousness in so many ways, and just to be conscious of something means just to have this reflective ability, and you can set an alarm in your clock, in your phone, and just make sure that you reflect a little bit every day if you feel like that. But what to do.
Yeah, and especially in what Rachel also said before, if you have a certain environment that's more corporate, even there, you have to have a certain thick skin, and even also a good consciousness, or a developed consciousness to bring something to the table. And maybe even you can rub off on other people. Maybe other people can transform by being in your perisphere and being around you, and maybe you can teach them something, and maybe you can teach them something about even also more conscious way of doing business. So that can also be very interesting. Even more so, we need those kind of people that are also
absolutely. And like I mentioned, I have a couple clients that are explicitly working in this space to raise their own level of awareness. I'll say expand or integrate, right? Whatever the action is there. But whatever the non-linear action is there.
Doing more conscious business.
Well, and it's so interesting, there's so many, I think, reasons for a sort of the individual and the collective, because we're separate and sovereign, and we're also connected, and that's both at once, right? But there's so many, I feel this the brain body divide, cognitive exceptionalism, coupled with technology, even how all of this works. It's really interesting how sitting in front of a computer all day can be extremely disembodying, and such consciousness requires that you bring the body along, as what I'm sort of learning, or what I'm seeing in my own journey, is we can't not bring the body along. We can't be aware. So some of the work that we do, we'll speak about these sort of more philosophical concepts, and we'll explore, but a lot of times I'm reminding them hey, you can step away from the computer. Taking a walk around the block is really important. And there's this really interesting sort of just as a bit of a sidebar or something to explore, right? How technology, or our sort of idea of what work is, we have to redefine what work is, and that includes how we work. So I'm really encouraging some of these folks to step away, to use pen and paper, to go do the dishes and think about work, if they're working from home in the pandemic, because the disembodying sort of experience of being in front of a screen every day, it will hijack your consciousness, in my experience.
Oh, maybe that is the perfect ending now. The next step will be that the consciousness requires that you bring your body along. And
I think so.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that
so.
in the next one. Is
Yes.
that with you? What do you think?